Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third day of Teach Econ Conference. Our session 4, which I'm very excited, is about incorporating real-world data and experiences into our courses. I'm Ramin Nassehi. I have the monopoly pleasure of chairing the session today. I'm a lecturer at the Department of Economics at University College London and also a member of CTEC. Now, a bit of housekeeping matters. Obviously, the session is being recorded and is being live streamed on YouTube, I guess, and you can put your questions in the Q&A and the chat. In terms of organization, so we have 3 very exciting papers on, incorporating real-world data, student-centered experiential learning and satellite imagery. So we're basically going one by one. First presentation, about 12 to 15 minutes. Then I'll take few questions. Then the second presentation, then the third presentation. So it would be a presentation, bit of questions, presentation, bit of questions, presentation, bit of question, and then the Q&A. So without further ado, let me go to our first speakers, Emma Bojinova and Jim Kill. Emma is from University of Connecticut and Jill is from California State University. And they're going to present on using real-world data to improve student learning. So the floor is yours.
So let me share my screen.
In the meantime, let me apologize, everyone, that we started a little bit late. I'm all ears. Yes,
so everybody,
your screen? Yes, absolutely.
okay. So let me start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our ongoing research using real data to improve student learning outcomes in economic courses. Does this really benefit students? This work done by doctors Emma Bojinova at University of Connecticut, Gil Kim at California State University at Fresno. So let me start with the introduction and literature review. Many students find economic concepts are too theoretical and have difficulties in understanding the concept. And because of that, they have a hard time to apply those knowledge to real world. 2 of the most important skills required at the workplace are the ability to analyze and handle data and to work with data analysis software such as Excel or Google Sheets. So although there is limited research on data-related assignments, a few recent studies, including Patel and Saunoris 2016, Mendez Carvalho 2015-2020, Mendez Carvalho and Arsarta 2017 focused on the benefits of data-driven hands-on activities and related pedagogical approaches. So given that previous literatures and our ongoing classroom experience over years, we came up with 2 research questions. So first one, do hands-on projects that incorporate real data and articles on current topics improve student learning of challenging economic concepts? Under this question, we do have 3 hypotheses. The first, the mean of post-test 1 is higher than mean of post-test pre-test. Hypothesis 2, mean of post-test 2 is higher than mean of pre-test. The last hypothesis is the mean of post-test 2 is higher than mean of post-test 1. We are going to talk about the timing of pre and post-test 1 and 2 in a minute, later slide. The second, our research question is, do such project improve student data analytical skills and ability to work with data analysis software like Excel or Google Sheets. We try to evaluate student performance on 2 projects and reviewed the student survey responses. So let me summarize our contribution. We have conducted 2 hands-on data projects with Fred data and current articles in 2 face-to-face classroom upper-level economics courses at 2 different universities. Such projects represent a holistic approach that incorporates both data analysis and application to real world. We evaluated both quantitative and qualitative benefits of such project by using pre and post test, mandatory project meeting with faculty, evaluation of the project, and the end of semester survey. Our evidence shows this pedagogical approach can be applied in other college or other courses to improvement of student learning outcome and in economic courses. So here goes methodology. Please note that our methodology is based on, this presentation is based on the pilot study which we conducted in spring 2022. So we incorporated 2 hands-on projects in our upper-level economics courses for the topics that students typically have difficulties in understanding. So for ARE 2150, Intermediate Applied and Resource Economics at University of Connecticut, Project 1, Price Elasticity of Demand for Clothing, Project 2, Minimum Wage and Production Analysis. For Econ 135, Money and Banking at California State University, Fresno, Project 1, Compounding Interest Rate and Saving relate to financial literacy. Project 2, about Taylor Rule. So here is the stage of our pedagogical research. We start with introductory online survey at the beginning of the semester and pre-test before any intervention, and lecture goes on for related topic. Then post-test 1 right after the lecture, but before project. Then project 1 introduced, and we used mid-intervention by using faculty-student meeting. Then post-test 2, right after project completed, we repeated step 2 to 3 for project 2, and the end of semester survey has been done. Little bit more detail about the project. We provide detailed instruction on how to search and download Fred data and explain the pedagogical rationale for the project. For data analysis part, students have to obtain data from the Fred, interpret descriptive statistics, compare data, make a calculation, manipulate data, and create graphs based on the question. For the reading part, students had to read the assigned article to learn important course concept, practice how to apply their knowledge to the real world. Mandatory student and faculty meeting for the project 1, but it was optional for project 2. Let me turn the presentation to my co-author, Emma Bojinova.
Thank you, Gil. So a little bit information about the 2 courses. Both courses were face-to-face, and all the pre and post tests were done in class. Students had about 10 to 12 minutes to complete the tests, and the questions on the pre and post test were very similar. And one of the questions on this test was either computational, open-ended, either computational or graphical. We had 30 students enrolled in 2150 and 32 in Econ 135. we excluded all students that did not complete either a pre-test or one of the post-tests, which decreased our sample size somewhat. As Gil explained, we conducted a pre-test for each project before any intervention and 2 post-tests, with the first one given after introducing the topics in class and the second one after the project completion. The table summarizes our results from the t-test for mean difference. The t-statistics are shown in the body of the table. The mean on post-test 1 for each project was higher than the mean score on the pre-test, and the mean on post-test 2 was higher than the mean on post-test 1. In other words, the mean difference was positive with each intervention, first after the lectures and second after the completion of the project. In columns 2 and 5, we show the results of our first hypothesis that teaching improves student knowledge of the studied concepts by comparing the results of the pre-test and post-test 1 that was given right after the lectures, but without the project. The test statistics from the mean difference test is positive, in each case indicating that lecture is beneficial to students' learning, but it's not significant in all cases, which means that lecture by itself may not be sufficient for students to learn more challenging concepts. Columns 3 and 6 show the results of the t-test for mean difference between the pre-test and post-test 2 scores. Please keep in mind that we had post-test 2 right after the completion of the project. The mean difference is also positive, and it's statistically significant at the 1%, which provides evidence that lecture and hands-on activities indeed improved student learning. The mean difference between post-test 1 and post-test 2 is our third hypothesis. It was also positive and significant in most cases, which provides some additional evidence for the benefit of the hands-on projects. We conducted a survey at the end of the semester, and this survey consisted of 10 Likert scale questions, 6 open-ended questions, and 5 demographic questions. Our goal was to see how students felt about the project. 19 students in Area 2150 completed the survey and 31 in Econ 135. You can see here on the slide some of the open-ended questions that we ask students to collect additional feedback. I'm going to discuss their responses in a few slides. This table summarizes our results from the Likert scale questions. 3 of the questions relate to our research question 1, and 1 of them relates to research question 2. I would like to point out some of the student responses to these questions. So with respect to the research question 1, which was whether a hands-on project with data analysis and current topics improves student learning, we had that overwhelmingly students felt that they were practical and showed the connection to the real world. So 94.7% in Area 2150 and 84% of the students in Econ 135 thought that this was a true statement. Also, almost 90% of the students indicated that the projects improved their understanding of the related economic concepts in Area 2150 and 87% in Econ 135. Also, students felt that the projects improved their critical thinking skills. About more than 2/3 of the students in both classes indicated that this was the case. With respect to our research hypothesis, research question number 2, we have almost 90%, about 74% in both classes stated that the projects improved their data analytical skills. I would like to briefly show some of the student responses to some of the open-ended questions. The first question was, what did you like most about this assignments projects? The answers that I would like to highlight provide some additional evidence for our research hypothesis. It was real data from the real world, giving me a better understanding of the topics. Getting the stats or graphs from the FRED database and doing some statistical analysis was really cool. That they show that we can't interact with real world data and apply to our own life in our careers. I really enjoyed the connection to the real world that these assignments and projects allowed for me to obtain. There were multiple similar responses in Econ 135. With respect to the second question, what did you learn from this assignments project? Students provided different answers depending on, they differed from class to class. Here are some of the responses that I would like to highlight. I learned a lot about the ways in which concepts we had learned in class are relevant to many of the actual industries we studied and used as examples in class, as well as how to get and use descriptive statistics. Real-world scenarios where topics covered in class make more sense by deeper understood usage. I learned how well compound interest can help save money in the future, as long as it sits and gets built on. I learned how to use Excel better. I learned the Taylor rule and about compounding interest. I also feel better educated about bonds and the bond market. There were multiple similar responses in Econ 135.
Would you be able to wrap up, please?
Yes. Let me summarize our findings. We found evidence that hands-on projects with real data and relevant current topics improve student learning of more challenging topics like the price elasticity of demand, minimum wage and production analysis, compounding interest rates and savings, and the Taylor rule. We also found evidence that such projects improve students' abilities to work with data analysis software like Excel and Google Sheets. Also, such assignments made the classroom environment more engaging, motivative, and inclusive. For our future work, we are planning to conduct another study in the fall semester with IRB approval, and we are planning to add regression analysis with some demographic statistics to further analyze the impact of such project on student learning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate any questions and suggestions.
Lovely. So would you be able to stop sharing? So just, let's spend just 3 or 4 minutes, addressing these short questions. First of all, in terms of your data analysis, someone has asked whether you controlled for other variables. Emma? Yeah.
Yes, I can answer this question. So with the data, right now we adjust what we showed with the pre and post test. We don't control for other variables, but with the regression analysis, we are planning to do so.
Lovely. And how far were the other question is that what was the lag between the two tests? How far were they apart from each other?
It depended on the topic, but I would say they were probably about, on average, like about 2 weeks.
And Mark has asked about the level of courses. They were both all intermediate, correct?
One is intermediate micro, the other one is money and banking, both are upper level economics courses, yes.
And we had a question about, do you give them the data or they need to find the time series themselves?
They need to find the data themselves. We give instructions and they had to download the data from the FRED website.
Yes, this was Dick's question. Very good. And one final one. Gosh has asked, do you also check if the students who feel they gain valuable skills are also performing better?
We haven't checked this, but we are planning to do that. That's an excellent question. This is like just a pilot study and we want to expand it and make it more thorough with more controls.
Lovely, lovely. And there was another question from Dunley. Sorry, we need to, go to our second speaker, but Dunley and Doug, we're going to come back to your comments later on. Without further ado, thank you so much, Emma and Gil. Without further ado, let me go to our second speaker, Gosia Mitka. She's going to talk about vertically integrated projects. Floor is yours. All good, we can see your screen. Yeah. You're mute, I think. Yeah.
No, can you hear me now?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So once again, hello, everybody. My name is Gosia Mitka. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Economics and Finance in St. Andrews, and also associate dean in the Faculty of Arts and Divinity. And huge thanks for inviting me, and I'm really delighted to be part of this fantastic event. Today, I'll talk about vertically integrated projects as an experiential student-centric approach to learning economics. And I'll start by talking about what vertically integrated projects are, how students learn, and why do we use this method. And then I will share with you some students' feedback and, time permitting, talk about teamwork case study findings. So on Monday, you may remember that Jadrian's slide was saying, what do lobsters, whales, and elephants have in common? I'd like to ask a question, what do Socrates, Galileo, and Einstein have in common? And I would like to start with Socrates, who apparently said that I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. Galileo apparently said that you cannot teach people anything, you can only help them discover it within themselves. And Einstein said, apparently, I never teach my pupils, I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. And what I will claim in my presentation is that vertically integrated projects create opportunities to discover and to learn economics. So what are vertically integrated projects? Vertically integrated projects have been pioneered by Professor Ed Coyle at the Georgia Tech, and they've been brought to St. Andrews in 2020. And together with my colleague Luc Bridet in economics, we designed one of the very first VIPs called HMO CAPS in St. Andrews. HMO stands for Housing Multiple Occupation, and these are houses occupied by more than one unrelated individuals. These are often students. And recently, our local council has introduced a so-called no growth policy to the number of HMO licenses. And you can see on the picture some headlines in the newspapers. And every student in St. Andrews needs to make a choice about where to live. So basically, this is a topic that is very local and very relevant to them. And in this project, students are building an economic model of a local housing market. And through that, they learn economics, statistics, coding, etc. They also gather and use the data they gathered to calibrate the model. And through that, they learn how to design questionnaires, interview people, apply for ethics approval, etc. And they also generate predictions with and without the policy limits on HMO licenses, and learn how to communicate those predictions to a general audience. Now, how are VIPs different from regular modules? There are no lectures, there are no seminars, no reading lists, no final exam, but students can still gain credits. Now, how is that possible? So students from different years of study form teams and work together on a project for usually more than one semester. Students come from not only different years of study, there can be first, second, third, or fourth year students, but they also come from different degrees. So we've got students doing economics, mathematics, computer science. And they meet weekly with us and as a team independently, and are assessed based on a portfolio of outputs. And I will talk about it in a minute. Now, on the right, you can see that this project was running already for 2 years, 4 semesters since 2020. We usually have less students in the first semester, and some students who started in the first semester continue for the second semester. And as you can see, as the number of students increases, this gives an opportunity for students to learn live about concepts such as division of labor or specialization, and also gives opportunity for those students who were in the first semester to mentor those new students and develop leadership skills. So in the second semester, students usually form sub-teams managed by leaders, and they organize their meetings and do things on their own. So let me talk to you a little bit about this distinct form of learning. So traditionally, students gathered to participate in the process of transfer of knowledge. And this is a very standard teacher-centric teaching with the teacher on the stage, as you can see on this picture of Henry of Germany delivering a lecture to university students. But this picture actually illustrates how engaging this type of teaching is. We can see students who are bored, chatting, or even sleeping. And we already know what Socrates and Galileo and Einstein think of this type of teaching. Now, instead, vertically integrated projects offer students a transformative learning opportunity, which happens because students can use their head, their heart, and their hand. So students think, feel, and act. It's a completely holistic approach. So students tackle a relevant problem and discover what knowledge they need to acquire to understand and solve this problem. They also encounter numerous obstacles and reflect on this experience and become more aware of their feelings. And after analyzing and evaluating the situation, the feelings in the process of reflection, they develop attitude or ways of thinking and plan of action, and then act. And we are there just to guide them and provide feedback, or as Einstein would say, provide the conditions in which they can learn. So I promised to talk to you about assessment. And here, oh, not yet. So why student-centric pedagogy? So on this slide, we can see that there are a number of quotes from the literature that evidence that this is a good way of achieving learning outcomes through active and experiential learning. It's been said that project-based learning is the deepest level of student-centric learning, that experiential learning allows students to learn by doing, apply knowledge in real-world contexts to develop skills, attitudes, and new ways of thinking. And through peer learning, because students learn in teams, students play active role in their own education and education of others and can form learning communities. Now is the part when I wanted to talk about assessment and how it relates to development of skills and attributes. So students are assessed through a portfolio of outputs, as I mentioned, and they submit individual reflective reports weekly, and then a final reflective report where they talk about their contribution to the project, but also reflect on their major areas of growth. And through the process of reflection, they become more self-aware and resilient and develop confidence and adaptability. So on the right, you can see skills and attributes, or the so-called graduate attributes that we have developed these analyses and want students to develop through learning. They also organize their weekly meetings and they log the meetings where they assign tasks to students. They prepare an agenda for the meeting. So this is how they learn to organize themselves, contribute effectively to teams, and lead others. They also prepare a team progress report, actually two of them, one midterm and one at the end. Based on the feedback from the midterm, students then have an ability to improve and submit a better product at the end. This also serves as a documentation for students that continue or join next semester. In this way, they develop research skills and problem-solving skills, and they learn how to communicate in a written way. And then the last part of assessment is either a team video or a poster or any sort of conference output of students' choice. It is a creative expression and way of communicating the results of the research to general audience. So they gain digital literacy skills in the process, oral and written communication, and again, they prepare it as a team. Of course, all of it contributes to their technical and specialist academic skills in economics, and is assessed as such. On this picture, we can see students at a vertically integrated projects conference, and on the left, you can see the posters that they have developed. They have also developed an interactive interface to demonstrate their model and engage in the audience, and they got the runner-up award for best display. Now, I'm really glad that we already had a presentation about authentic assessment from yesterday, so we may remember this assessment has not been designed just to give students grade. It is authentic in that it serves a purpose for the project. You may remember Peter mentioned routine, applied, and creative. So we can see that through this portfolio of outputs, students can evidence not only remembering and understanding, but also applying in the higher skills of creating. Now, reflection is an essential part of this type of learning and key elements. So students are following the reflective cycle, and in the process, they use their head, their heart, again, their head, and they can develop an action plan. Now, the skills developed in this module are very relevant for the job market. Here we have a local Scottish context where we can see the missing personal skills among applicants. All of them that I have mentioned can be developed through this way of learning. So students' feedback is very positive, and here just a couple of examples where students showed that they were able to develop leadership skills and grow as a leader. They develop interpersonal and team working skills and are able to communicate better. And it improves their resilience, ability to manage time. They adapt to new challenges and develop self-confidence.
2 minutes.
Thank you. So now let me just present you some results from a wider vertically integrated projects teamwork study. It's not only based on our economics module, but other vertically integrated projects that we have in St. Andrews. It's a study joined with Professor Ian Smith and Shruti Narayanaswamy. Based on module evaluation questionnaire, teamwork questionnaire, and the reflective logs that students submit, we are identifying how students benefit from teamwork more in these modules relative to regular modules. And basically the findings are that relative to teamwork in regular modules, students benefit more because of the diversity of teams, the different years of study, different subjects, and different skill sets. The longer duration and the opportunity to take part in those projects for more than one semester, the fact that students produce authentic outputs and it increases their motivation, and opportunities to be creative, exercise agency, and develop their interpersonal skills. And here are just a couple of examples of students' feedback. So they really like to work with people from different backgrounds. It improves their teamwork, creativity, communication, and it is an opportunity that they value because they don't have an opportunity to engage in such practical examples in other modules. And I'll stop here and thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to your questions and discussions.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, very good questions. I'll just shoot them right away. Joel has asked about the scale, Gosia. I remember we're talking about 10 to 12 students, correct?
Yes, that's right.
What happens if you scale up? What happens? What's the challenge when you scale up?
Yes, the challenge is both for us supervisors, because we provide feedback weekly on the reflection and work with students, but also we notice that it's a huge challenge for students to increase the size of the team from, say, 4-6 students to just twice as much, which is still quite little, it's just 12, but students develop usually very strong bonds in the first semester, and then suddenly they're thrown into a situation where they're joined by less experienced students who may have different opinions, and then they need to form sub teams. So it is a real challenge, but we see it as an opportunity to develop those skills that students would normally not be able to develop.
Thank you. And very good question from Carlos. How did you convince the quality assurance QAA roles to do this assessment?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So we managed to find a way to sneak it into our programs. It is an optional module. So most of the degrees in St. Andrews allow students for an optional module. And the challenge is how to fit it into the program. And we found a way that basically students from different years can take it for different number of credits. So we can have students from second year taking it for 10 credits and students from the fourth year taking it for 20 credits. Now, this adds another challenge among students. We make students aware of that and tell them that they should expect contribution relative to the year of study and number of credits, and same, we take it into account into our assessment. But it requires some central structures at the university to facilitate that.
Tell me about it. Yes, yes. And let me just use my monopoly position as a chair, just throw a question here. You talked about a conference, a VIP conference. What happens at that conference?
Yes, that is an internal conference where all of the vertically integrated projects, students and supervisors come together. Each team has a stand, so they present their work. They are there to interact with the audience, and there are some presentations. And it also is an opportunity for students and supervisors who would like to start a project like that to come in and ask questions about the experience. But basically, it's a celebration of the work, of the outputs, and learning from each other.
I agree. I mean, that's the future for conferences. More focus on celebration. Showcasing. Very good. Thank you. Now it's we turn to our final speaker, Nazanin Khazra from University of Toronto, and she's going to talk about invisible data. I'm not going to say anything more. Floor is yours. We can see your desktop, Nazanin. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, despite all the things that's going on in the world. Today, I'm going to talk about invisible data helping students capitalize on publicly available satellite imagery. Okay, so I have about 50 slides. I want you to be good students and pay attention. I'm going to move really fast. I'm going to start with a quote from this paper, which I highly recommend that interested people read. An exciting research avenue concerns the use of broad sets of satellite data combined with techniques from machine learning to obtain predictors of a phenomenon of interest. This type of work has not yet seen much application in economics. So this paper was written 6 years ago, and from then we have seen some very good papers come out, but not many universities or not many econ departments have courses that teach students how to work with satellite data and how to think about this enormous amount of data that we have access to now. Importance of satellite data in economics. So first of all, it gives us access to difficult to obtain or new data. For example, if you want to have zip code level data for income for a developing country or a dictatorship country, there is really hard. The data either doesn't exist or it's very hard to get it. But with satellite data, you have some ways to predict income. You have access to high resolution spatial data. You have a wide geographic coverage because satellites take pictures from all around the world. So you don't have missing observations for a specific country or region. You have a reliable time coverage. It's not like governmental surveys where the government decides to stop the survey after like 10 years of doing it. You have the data from when the satellite has been up, and it's usually free. The disadvantages are the following. The application can sometimes be unclear. I'm going to talk more about that later. And also processing can be computationally expensive because we're dealing with high resolution imagery that are very heavy to store and process. So some very common data sets that people have created and used is night lights data. There are many econ papers on night lights data. Some geography data, crop choice, forest cover, urban development. You can observe building type, roads, air pollution. Some people have been following oil spillage in the oceans, wildfires, disasters, natural disasters. So you can have data on all of this using satellite data for free for around the world over time. So when do you think was the first time that human beings sort of saw the Earth from above? So this guy took one of the first few pictures, and a German apothecary actually submitted a patent for pigeon camera. He sent a pigeon with a camera above and took these pictures, which are not perfect for econ analysis, but they're one of the first few pictures that were taken from above. And here you can see the wings covering the camera. So we started from then in 1900, and then from then there have been great advancements. And post 2014, after a government ruling, American companies are now allowed to sell satellite imagery with super high resolution to public. So if you want to do boundary analysis or definitive, or that needs to be very zoomed in on a specific location, you can now do that. And some people are counting cars in retailers' parking lots to estimate market demand, which is the industry application of this data for economists. Going to go really fast here, maybe skip these. Okay, so satellites have some sensors, and these sensors observe the energy that comes back from the Earth in some spectrum, and they can have one or more sensors. So for example, you can observe all of these bands coming out. A satellite can basically record all of these. You can have the visible light, you can have near infrared, shortwave, infrared, and you can see the applications here. For example, if you're interested in observing oil and gas on Earth, you should look at shortwave, infrared, 645, etc. And there are more than 4,000 satellites orbiting the Earth right now, and about 1,000 or so of them are from NASA. I've worked with this one, Landsat, and many people have been working with most of these satellites. So how do you work with them? You should first pick your satellite, decide about the time and location of the images that you want to process, intelligently define your measure, or if you don't have a specific idea in mind, you can follow the literature and then start processing. I'm going to quickly do a literature review to show you what applications have been used in economics. So this is a forthcoming JP paper that uses the nightlight data to predict GDP growth, and then shows that dictators over predict GDP growth by 35%. This is a 22 Academy of Sciences paper that estimates income, wealth, not income, for all low and middle income countries. This is an amazing paper, and they use not only satellite data, but some demographic, survey, geographic, and like Facebook and mobile connection data. And they feed this information into a machine learning model and predict this previously non-existent data. And they have this data for free if you want to just use the processed data. In another paper, in another Nature paper, 2022 again, they use satellite imagery to predict pixel by pixel level poverty map for Togo, and then they use this to target for COVID relief funds, and send the fund to targeted locations because to maximize welfare, which is again a great application. This is a paper by one of my PhD friends, AER 2021. He uses, and you can see the sources of these satellite data sets. I'm going to put the slides on my website so you don't have to take notes, but feel free to use the slides in your teaching, or just take screenshots. In this paper, he estimates a 10 by 10 kilometer aerosol concentration, and shows that what counties are reporting as air quality is the best air quality in a given week, and are not really representative. Another paper uses the nightlight data again. You have the source here, and shows that cities in bad shape. So they can actually have the shape of the city and show that cities in bad shape actually grow less and have more economic issues. So I'm going to skip all these other studies, but feel free to check them out later. Popular sources for remote sensing data in economics. So these are the data sets that people have used. You have access to their code, to their process data, everything, especially if they were AER papers. So this nightlight paper comes from this sensor. You have the resolutions here. We have data for topography, agriculture, and crops. You have this data by crop category in 30-meter pixels, which is great. You have we have the pollution data from the SMODIS data set, and this is a table from the paper that I started with. Here you have the sources, you have the economic applications, resolution, pricing, the time span, and examples that have been published until 2016, and some resources. So this is not complete. I tried to complete this this list, and I'll give you the resources at the end. So how I teach this stuff in my courses. First of all, my course is a second-year course, but these are data analytics minors or focused students. So they're kind of special. They've taken computer science courses before, and they're relatively good in coding. And I only cover this for 2 sessions mid-semester. So the things that they have learned up to this point is they know intermediate coding, they can merge things, they can visualize, and they have been working with maps so that they can plot maps and color code and things like that. And they have been working with spatial data and latitudes and longitudes. So this part is important because when you process satellite data, you get latitudes and longitudes, and you want to know a way to merge them back to counties, zip codes, or other spatial units. And then in those 2 weeks, I talk about the literature, and then I show them an example to create a vegetation index from the Sentinel-2 satellite data. And then provide them with some other resources to create other data sets. And so they use this in their weekly exercise. So I show them how to calculate the vegetation index for a rectangular box around our campus in Toronto. And they should use this code and create this vegetation index for another month, according to the last digit of their student ID, and for their hometown or another city. So each student is basically working on their own exercise because the month is different, the location is different, and changing the code is not that straightforward. So it's not just changing one line. They should rerun everything and think about each step to finish this exercise. And then at the end, they report their vegetation map.
2 minutes.
Great. And okay, I'm going to skip the projects just to show you the lab, and then I have the resources here and the list of papers that have been published in good journals. So again, feel free to use all of this material in your teaching. I'm going to show you oops. Maybe this was better. I'm going to show you the lab that I have here. So I start with explaining rasters and some more definition. Here we pick our satellite. So I teach this in Python. And the good thing about Python is that you have a library for anything that you look for. So here we have a library for this Sentinel satellite. We import the library, and this library has an API. So students should go to this Copernicus website, which is the name of the program that sent the satellites up, and create an account. And then they just paste their username and password here. And with this API, they can download the pictures. Here I'm saying that give me all the pictures that the satellite took for the month of July in 2019. This is the name of the satellite that I'm looking for. And I want the cloud coverage to be like less than 10%. So you can set that either to get better images. This is my image. Then I have the image in 10 by 10, 20 by 20, and 60 by 60 meter resolution. And in each of these folders, you have some files, and each file is related to one of these bands. So each file has the blue color, the green color, the red color, near infrared, and so on. And then with some more code, sure. We get this out and we calculate the index, which is near infrared minus red over near infrared plus red, and then you can actually map this and see the vegetation for the box that we created. Okay, so in the hopefully we'll have more time to okay, I'm just going to quickly show you this with website.
Let's go. I mean, we'll have the chance to get back. I'll promise you, we'll get back. This is very interesting. Awesome. I think, let me just pose, I mean, Doug asked this question. I think you probably answered already. What's the usual format that these datas, the satellite datas, come in?
There are pictures. There are high resolution pictures, and
the format of the data itself, you know.
Oh, there are TIFF, TIFF, which is again like a very heavy picture with lots of there are rasters, so that you have many information layered up on each other. You have the location, you have all of the information that these bands have recorded, like color, red, green, blue, and then you can call which information you want.
And just a little bit about the context. What level? I think probably you mentioned this. I missed this. What level of the module is this?
So this is for our second year students, second year undergrad. Yes, yeah. But this is considered a very hard course for our best students. So you can think about this as a fourth year course for general econ students, and this is just 2 weeks.
Joel has asked, are there any prohibitions on the uses of these data?
No, they are all free. If you have time, I'll show you the resources that you can just download them right now.
Okay. One again. So I'm just a little bit of a deeper question. What's the I can see the pedagogical value, definitely. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most important pedagogical value here? So
there are two main things, well, maybe three. One is that I think I personally am tired of asking my students to work with census data. And there has been many papers on census, and it's impossible to find something new. But when they work with some data set, when they create this data set, or when they work with this new data set, they can say new things. And if they want to go to academia later on, they have a paper to work on. If they want to go to industry, there are many industries that work with this kind of data to predict demand and so on, and they can signal their coding skills as well. Very good. And probably, from my perspective, Nazanin, is that they can work on something that's very close to them, very local. You said that you give a task to them that they can map what's happening on Toronto's campus. Exactly. Yeah. It's much more intuitive, much closer to your your everyday experience. Definitely. So thank you all. Can I ask everyone to open up their cameras again? And so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. I think let's go back to Gosia. There was a question about free riding, I think. How do you handle the free riding?
Thank you. Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think students themselves are very worried about group projects because of this potential situation. And in our case, students actually keep each other accountable. We have this weekly team log where students define tasks and assign names. And then next week, they check whether these tasks have been achieved. So there is some sort of peer pressure there. There is the peer feedback halfway the term, so students give each other feedback, and I think that's also a good way to keep each other accountable. Quite a high proportion of final grade is assigned to individual contribution, and I think that also motivates students. We need to see evidence of their work, and it's actually
how do you do that, by the way?
Yeah, so it's I think it's 60% is individual reflective report, in which at the end of the year they reflect on the major contribution, and it's really hard to write about major contribution if it didn't happen. But that would be too late. We actually can control it every week. So every week students submit a reflective log where they describe what they have achieved last week and what were the major challenges. And here again, you can really see who is writing about something specific, who has engaged versus someone who is somehow lazy. And then it's also for us, we can intervene pretty quickly. But also as the team increases, another way to keep students accountable is through the team leaders. And they get signals from students. These are usually very motivated students. So if someone is not contributing, the rest of the team will pick that up and will put pressure on them. And it also gives the leader an opportunity to develop leadership skills and deal with this real life situation in the process. So I think there are many mechanisms. And we had a situation where student was kind of late in the game, but even then we gave them an opportunity to contribute the way they could, and they had an option to do things individually or just contribute. And in the end, they contributed, and we kind of managed to restore a good atmosphere and good team spirit.
So before I go to Emma and Gail, just let me go back to Nazanin again. Joel has asked about the coding requirement in your module is quite high. So what happens with, don't you think this is a barrier for most students?
So they should take a like the CS 101 kind of class as a prerequisite. And then I spend 1 week on Python, and I start from very basic. So I don't think that's it is a barrier, but they have to eventually learn it if they want to find a job in industry, or if they want to become a researcher. So I think it is hard, but they have to do it eventually, like most students. And I think also Doug asked if there are any pre-processed data. So if you don't want to process the images like I did in this lab, you can use the data sets that are available in these papers. Like AER requires them to post the data, and then you can just work with that processed data, and there are lots of them.
Do they work on teams or on their own? The students
on their own.
On their own. So let me go back to Emma and Gail. So correct me if I'm wrong, as part of your project, students had to do many things, writing, interpreting. What do they find most challenging? Gail, would you like to have a go? Yeah.
So our project contains, they need to read 2 main articles, and by the time when they start their project, they already finished the lecture. I mean, they already had a lecture, so they do have a basic idea of the concept. They need to digest it, but they need to apply their concept to work with the data. I think I see that they have the most challenging part on the manipulating data and try to use Excel. But challenging does not mean not encouraging. They really like I see that they really like the project, and I personally I got more a lot of questions than ever before, let's say, without project. So I see that they are in some way enjoying that challenge. Another thing though, for example, let's just say when I said inflation rate, right? It seems they know how to calculate inflation, but when I give them CPI, okay, go ahead, right? They took a moment. They kind of need to time to figure it out how to make CPI to inflation. So in a way, having that moment, hands-on experience is really challenging, but yet beneficial for student. Is that answering the question?
Yeah,
Emma, you can add.
yeah.
I can add a couple more things. So it depends on the project, I would say. I would start with the first project in both of our classes. This is where we started asking them to download the data with some instructions and then manipulate the data, analyze, answer questions related to the data. And I saw some students indeed struggled. So that's why we had the mandatory one-on-one meeting with each student. So we kind of said it, let's meet one-on-one for 10 minutes. It can be either virtual or in person, but before our meeting, I would like you, we ask them, please submit at least about 50% of your project. So we see how we are doing. So we kind of wanted to give them a motivation. So when we met with them, we could provide feedback on any issues that they may have with data. Based on my one-on-one meetings, I can say that probably there were a few students that really struggled with Excel, have never used it before, but they learned how to do it. We have instructions that we demonstrated, each of us demonstrated in class how to do that. We also posted videos with instructions on how to manipulate the data and so on. The other thing that I would say, and I see my students struggling, my first project was on the price elasticity of demand. And it was for clothing. So I asked them a variety of questions. One of them is to obtain the arc elasticity and compare different periods and interpret, talk about how this affects total revenue or total expenditures of consumers, what will happen if the price changes and so on. This was not too bad and they didn't struggle much, but I asked them to obtain the data, to make a scatter plot, obtain the trend line, and also ask them that way to derive the demand curve. This is where I saw students struggling, and from there I also asked to compute the point elasticity of demand. But the ones that really struggled on a one-on-one meeting, we kind of discussed, I explained the procedure, not answering the question directly, but telling them, if you have this, what would you do, kind of guiding them. So that's why some of the comments the students gave, and we mentioned some of those where they struggled with Excel, but they learned how to do it.
Thank you. Another good question from Joel. Thank you for the great questions to Gosia. So you mentioned that the VIP involves the groups kind of mixes the students from different years. And what's the implication of that for assessment?
Yeah, so assessment is the same for all students. Marking rubrics are the same. So in a sense, when we look at we cannot really say in the group assessment students' contribution. The only differentiation we make is that students who take the module for less credits prepare the team log in pairs, and those who take it for more credits do it individually. But so through the group project, if group assessment, we cannot, it only is visible in the individual ones through the way students self-reported there. And we evaluate it based on their year and contribution. But basically, students are made aware of how many credits every student is taking and which year of study they are in. And they develop this self-awareness and awareness of others. And then they are not supposed to expect more from students who take this for less credits. But so far, it's been running smoothly, but there is no perfect way to monitor that.
Very good. Nazanin, I'm now going, talk about, the next step. What's the next step for your project? What do you have in mind?
For which project?
For the using the invisible
For the
data.
courses.
Yeah.
So I think the amount of time that I spend in my course is very limited on this topic. So if someone defines a project on this data set from the beginning, because in my course, the students are working with some other data sets and they kind of complement their data set with the satellite data, which makes it really hard. But if someone defines a project on a given satellite, and then ask students to work on different timeframes or different locations so that their projects are different, but they're still working on the same thing and their codes are somewhat similar, I think that would be a more interesting way of incorporating these kinds of projects in teaching. I also wanted to add something to respond to Doug. So it's not that we're tired of census, it's not just for fun. I think that these public data sets are fully exhausted. Like you can't write a new paper on these data sets and publish in JP or Nature. You want to have access to new stuff, to say new things. And that's the main idea. And we want our students to go to good grad schools and to get great industry jobs. And that's a big requirement. That's at least how I see things and what motivated me to incorporate this in my teaching. And at the end, if we have time, I wanted to show a resource.
Want to go back? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. So this is Google Earth Engine. And they have the catalog for all of the different satellite data, like surface temperature, weather, Landsat. This Sentinel is the satellite that I used in the lab. The MODIS is the air quality data. Here you have high resolution imagery. You can count the airplanes. And if you click on any of these, and these are like croplands, you can have data on different types of crops. And if you click on these, then they have different data sets according to different satellites, and they have sample code in Python and APIs that allows you to pull the data with just like 2-3 lines of code. Also, here in the slides, I have like a tutorial in R with examples and some resources for free data and commercial data sources and list of papers that you can add to your reading list. Also, if someone doesn't like the coding or data aspect of this, Google has some very interesting videos on how Earth changes because of climate change, or you can just use the satellite imagery for the descriptive part of the courses and just show the videos or talk about the existence of this resource.
Nazanin, may I ask you to share these sources in especially your website, your slides as well? That would be great. You could share these.
Sure.
In the meantime, can I ask Emma and Gail, what's the next step for your project?
So I can briefly start. As we mentioned, we are going to repeat our hands-on project research for fall semester 2022. And we need to start with IRB application and submission and approval for that before our official research started. So that is our next agenda.
Gosia, next steps.
Thank you. Yeah, so the project continues, but every semester, depending on what new students can bring into the project and what their interests are, they're kind of determine the trajectory. and the direction of travel. What we have in mind is also engaging with our local council to bring them either take our students there or bring them into the classroom, show them our work, and inform our next steps, as this project is directly relevant to what they do. Maybe
good.
also collect more data with local residents and students, as during the pandemic that was actually difficult. We could only do things online, whereas we would like to engage with more in-person interviews.
Lovely, lovely. So Prama, do you have any questions? Would you like to jump in? Okay. So let me go back and have a look in the Q&A. I think Joel has asked a question. With our big courses, we use GTAs, and so what was there additional requirements for conveners in this respect? I don't know who this question is addressed to. But Gosia, let me ask this again. Do you have any comments for your external examiners?
External examiners are usually positively surprised, but the truth is they don't really know what to expect because they're not very familiar with this type of learning. But generally, they commend us for high standards and for the fact that students can develop a wide range of skills that. And knowledge. And usually our students, especially from their younger years, so say second-year students, they learn much more in-depth economics and statistics, and also coding, because our coding is in Python. So they are generally very, very positive about that.
Okay, let's go with a round of each person. 20 minutes. Final thoughts. Nazanin, let's start with you. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. So I think that maybe I was not clear. I don't mean that we should get rid of census and all the other data sets that we're working on and just focus on satellite. I'm just saying that there are some new things and new possibilities that we can explore. And if our students have the capabilities to learn these things, or if it's related to our fields, we can incorporate them in our teaching. And I think sooner is better than later. And just introducing these concepts can play a huge role in our students' future.
Emma?
I just want to mention one thing. We see that many economic students, when they start working, some of them, and we heard from some of our alumni, they lack data analysis skills and ability to apply concepts. So that's why we are trying in our curriculum to encourage this. So we start in many different courses that they have the option to do data analysis and be able to apply the economic concepts to the real world. So this is something that it's very important and will help them perform better in their jobs.
Gil?
I would like to say thank you so much for all the presentation. I learned a lot from each of you, and thank you for the comments and questions that makes me refresh my memory and also rethinking what we have done and give us a better idea. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Gosia?
Thank you. I mean, what I can share is that I truly enjoy working with students in the VIP. It's a completely different experience. I personally don't like teaching big groups without too much connection and looking at assessment that is purely designed to assess students. This is a really opportunity to grow for students, but also for us to go out of our comfort zone and way to develop ourselves and enjoy learning with students. So I can totally recommend to everyone this way of working with students. And if you can see that your university is creating obstacles, that is always the case. There will always be resistance to change, so you just need to push really hard for it. And I wish you good luck if you're interested to do that.
Thank you. So thank you for everyone for these fantastic ideas, VIP, satellite data, project-based assignments. And may I ask everyone to join me in giving our speakers a very warm sea-tail applause. And thank you, everyone. Our next session would start in 10 minutes, and that would be closely fit to this one: why and how to teach students to tell economic stories with data. So thank you all. See you soon. Take care. Bye.